Sure, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here at Drake. Nice to see you all. As we get started, let me say a little bit about my pedigree in interfaith. As the professor mentioned, I've been a Buddhist monk now for 41 years. Imagine. That either means I have very little imagination, can't think of anything else to do, or else I found my calling, I guess. But 30 years into it, 25 years into it, my teacher suggested that we needed, that the local interfaith community needed Buddhists. And so I attended the United Religions Initiative First Global Summit, a very lofty name for a gathering of religious folks at Stanford. And the idea was that United Nations, which was the League of Nations when it started, began where? Anybody know? San Francisco, 10 points. Well done. Okay. And that was, at the time, was 50 years ago. This was 2000, let's see, 1997. 1995, I believe, was so 50 years before the League of Nations began, which became the United Nations in San Francisco. So the United Nations said, let's celebrate our 50th anniversary, come back to San Francisco. So they went to Grace Cathedral on top of Nob Hill and said to the Episcopalian Bishop of San Francisco, Reverend William Swing, they said, we'll bring the nations, can you bring the churches? He said, they said. And Bishop Swing said, how ironic, he said, that the United Nations, which is made up of nations that are often in military conflict with each other, actually attempting to destroy each other, still have a table where they can sit around and talk about a brighter day and create things like UNESCO and World Health Organization, et cetera. He said, and yet the religions of the world, which are so often contributing to the causes of unpeace, don't even have a table. He said, what a shame. Let's create a, quote, United Nations of Religions. So that was the original intent. And after polling the religions in the Bay Area, they came up with the United Religions Initiative, which was a little less grandiose than the United Religions, because United Religions would be kind of an oxymoron. So that was the beginning of URI, which is now a major grassroots interfaith initiative, probably the largest one in the world. It has over, now I think we're close to 800 cooperation circles, CCs, which are it's the non-top-down version of religious organization. And it's in every continent, I think, maybe something like 70 nations. So that was the United Religions Initiative. And I was on the original, I'm counting my pedigree in interfaith. I was on the, what's called the Global Council for 8 years until term limits and stepped down. But I'm proud to say that I have been in attendance at 4 Parliaments of the World's Religions, starting in 1999. Any Parliament goers here? Parliament veterans? So you got that merit badge on your sash, right? Check it out. The Parliament is from Chicago. Anybody know the date of the opening Parliament? Yes, sir. One. You don't count. Yes, ma'am. 1892. Oh, close. We'll give you 4 points for that one. 93. And who was the star? Swami Vivekananda. Oh my goodness! It happened in Chicago, and it was the World's Fair, 1893, and the Parliament of Religions was back in the corner. They had what? They had the Parliament of Industry and the Parliament of Commerce, and it was called the Columbian Exposition. It was a big deal for Chicago and for interfaith. And in the back corner was the Parliament of Religions, one of the least important of the various gatherings. And yet, for the very first time, they had representatives of world religions, non-Abrahamic, representing themselves, instead of some scholar going out and doing field work and coming back and talking about the exotic Hindu, Hindoo, you know. Here was Swami Vivekananda from the Ramakrishna order of Vedanta monks. Actually, there's a wonderful audio file of his talk that's still there. And he was an orator to die for. And first of all, he was very charismatic and just a dramatic man with his turban. Very handsome, and the Chinese would call him a zheng ren junzi. He's a true representative of humanity at its finest. But his oratorical skills in English were just superb. And of course, his vision was a Vedantist, inclusive worldview. And so he gave his opening talk and electrified the parliament. And they called him back. And among some of the other people there were D.T. Suzuki, if people know the name, is in Buddhist writing, who was then a lowly clerk for another Japanese Buddhist representative. Anyway, so Swami Vivekananda showed up at the parliament. 100 years later, Parliament number 2, 1993, and they held it in the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago. They planned for 3,000 participants, and something like 10,000 folks showed up. And there's the famous Palmer House Hotel elevator, which was very, very slow. And they said the best part of the parliament happened in the elevator because you had plenty of time to dialogue as it made its way up to the, And at the time, earth-based religions, which is what we call Wicca, right, in the interfaith movement, were not kosher enough. They held their own parliament in the park across the highway. So interesting how that went. Since then, there have been parliaments in Cape Town in 1999. I got to meet Nelson Mandela. Boom, 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 And His Holiness was there. Then the next one was in Barcelona. The one after that was in Melbourne, Australia. You know how you spell Australia if you're from there? S-T-R-A-Y-A, Australia, from Australia. Right, so it's Melbourne, Australia. And then the last one was in Salt Lake City. The last parliament, interesting, here's a statement. This is how interfaith works, right? So after the Melbourne Parliament, things were not looking good for the small staff of the Parliament of World's Religions, which is in Chicago. They've got, they have a big mailing list and a chairperson and a couple secretaries, but they add temps every 5 years when the Parliament happens again. So the Melbourne Parliament funds that were promised were not delivered. And the Parliament office took a big debt and said, probably that was the last Parliament of World's Religions, because we simply couldn't afford the overhead of doing it again, because it's a global event. All the religions of the world appear. What happened was the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, bless their hearts, said, we'll rent you the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City for $1. Yeah, wow, indeed. And the Parliament happened. They thought that might be the last one after Melbourne, but bless their hearts. And we got to hear the Mormon Tabernacle Choir in their home, stuff like that. So that was great. Anyway, so the Parliament of World's Religions. The newest one is supposed to happen in Toronto, so they've decided to change it instead of every 5 years, every other year. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But do put that on your radar as something to investigate. I just give you another footnote. The Parliament in Cape Town, Professor Huston Smith, recently, sadly late, of Berkeley, California, who took the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery as his local sangha, I might add. In our second floor library is the Huston Smith Memorial Library. He, for the Parliament in Cape Town, invited 60 Native American elders, because the Native American religions had never been invited to the world stage. as if they didn't exist. So Huston Smith had done some serious research, published into the peyote rituals and such things, Native American religion, and was able to make it legal under conditions. So the rest of the world's religions were thrilled because why? They were going to meet red Indians for the first time. And of course, they had all been raised on a diet of cowboy and Indian films, right? So they, oh my, how exciting, you know. So Huston Smith in the opening ceremony, in this, there's stories within stories, but here we are, about 9,000 people gathered in this university auditorium. And Huston Smith comes on with the chairman of the parliament at that time and said, I'd like to now introduce Elder Herman Hagoyo from the Nez Perce tribe. Herman Hagoyo came out and he brought his daughter along and they chanted a welcome kind of blessing. And then Herman said, now I would like you to hear the voice of Native America, Miss Joanne Shenandoah. He said, anybody know Joanne Shenandoah? She's an Iroquois from around Syracuse area. And things that you didn't know, the Iroquois nation at its highest, when the six traditions came together and made peace, extended from Wisconsin to the Atlantic Ocean, from the top of the Laurentian Shield in northern Ontario down to Virginia. Right? That was the Iroquois nation when the Iroquois Confederacy came together. Currently, what's the scope of the vast Iroquois nation after the predation of us types? 36 acres. It's an independent entity within the United States. They issue their own passports, and it's 36 acres down. So anyway, there was Joanne. Joanne Shenandoah is a singer. She came on the stage wearing buckskins, carrying a black acoustic guitar, and she sang the Creator's Song, it's called. And together, the first vision of Native American spirituality raised the spiritual horizon of the parliament through the roof. And it was a moment never to forget. And so that was one of those, the parliaments of world's religions are an event to experience because you can look out over the crowd and see 300 different traditions, indigenous expressions, and religious practices represented in harmony for the time that they're meeting, you know, sitting there together. Very powerful. So that's a little bit of my background in interfaith. And one of the things I'd like to share with you all tonight has to do with this, the topic was interfaith. Professor Knepper, we need your password, I'm sorry. No can do. I'll fake it. We'll just tell stories. Great, thanks. In terms of the comparison project, as I understand what you're all about, it sounds really interesting, and that the community is strongly, all the different perspectives are represented. What I wanted to share was the topic of Buddhists in the environment, particularly as expressed in an event that happened in 2008 at Gethsemane Abbey in Kentucky, the home of Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton? Yes? One of the more visible and connected Benedictine Trappist monks of the last century. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Thomas Merton were good friends. And they had met. His Holiness was impressed by Thomas Merton's vision and what he opened, the promise of Roman Catholicism and Buddhism talking to each other, and finding in the monastic community harmony and mutual inspiration. So the two of them had planned to get together and talk about interfaith dialogue. Merton flew to Thailand, was in a shower stall with water under his feet, slipped, reached up, grabbed a live wire, and electrocuted himself, and died. His Holiness, shattered by that event, said, "This is unfair, but his life is an inspiration. Let's continue the dialogue." So the Gethsemane encounter happened, it was, what was it, 95 or something like that. Since then, there have been 4 Gethsemane encounters between Buddhist and Catholic monastics and laity and scholars. And the third one was Monks in the Environment. I was the co-convener of that with Father William Skudlaric from St. John's, north of here in Minnesota. And some of the, this will be a little bit of a challenge here. Some of the things that happened I'd like to share. I wonder, I'm going to butcher my slideshow here. Let's see what we can do. All right. This is Master Hsuan Hua. This is my teacher in religion. I've been a Buddhist monk, as I mentioned, for 4 decades here, and he was the monk who introduced this notion that being the new religion in town, it's important for the Buddhists to open their doors and share our space to understand and learn from the other religions in the West. This is a pluralistic nation. There's plenty of religions to go around, so who needs a new one, right? Who is this? This is the Roman Catholic Cardinal of China, Paul Cardinal Yubin. Master Hua is on your right, Cardinal Yubin is on the left. And here's another one of those stories. They both were born in a place called Twin Cities County in Manchuria, and yet never met each other. They both came from Shuangchengxian in Dongbei, northeastern China, and they'd heard about each other as children because Master Hua was known as the Bai Xiaozi, the filial son Bai, the filial son from the Bai family. And he was just an exemplar, kind of a model for a young man. And Mrs. Yubin, the mother of the man who became the Roman Catholic Cardinal of China, heard about filial son Bai and used to scold her son and say, "Why can't you be as good as he is," right? And Cardinal Yubin was likewise considered a model son. Mrs. Bai heard about him and scolded her son, holding Yubin up as a model. The two of them heard of each other growing up but had never met. So when I was doing this pilgrimage at one point, Master Hua said, "We're going to see Yubin. We're both in LA. Do you want to come?" And I was talking to my teacher, but no one else for that period of time. And I would really like to meet him. So we walked into this house in one of the suburban LA communities, and this very tall Chinese came down with a big cross around his neck, right? And said, "Wow," 他说，"你们讲的话很熟啊，我很喜欢你们所讲的话." He said, "I just love the sound of your voice. It just sounds so familiar." Master Hua said, 当然了，同志嘛，知音者，他说. And of course, we are those who know each other's sounds, 知音者, soulmates. So they come from the same hometown. They both knew the same slang and the same jokes, right? So how wonderful, and he met. And so this was one of those moments of interfaith harmony. This is a scene from Gethsemane encounter number 3, monks and the environment. Notice the monastic emphasis, right? Buddhists and Catholic monastics, monks, nuns, lay people, scholars, various traditions, Benedictines, Buddhists, who share this view. Which is what? And can anybody identify this for 6 points? Anybody know? I looked it up this afternoon, so I'm up to speed. Can you date it? Oh, no. Shoot, I just, okay. 1968, it was Apollo number, shoot, all right. We're going to subtract points from yours. So this was Apollo 11, but the first famous one was Apollo 8, when for the first time we saw the planet Earth from off the Earth. It was the first, the Apollo mission had come around the Earth, had come around the moon, sorry. It was the first orbiting lunar orbiter, right? They come around the moon and saw this blue marble set against this deep black background. Nothing out there to, visible to the eye. And we saw, gee whiz, it's kind of lonely. As they say, there is no planet B, right? There's only plan A, there's this one. And we're there. That's us, And so, what a change of perspective, suddenly, when you see the finite limits to this spaceship Earth, which we share. That's it. So, that was here's monks on a pilgrimage. Some of the program that we shared with the Catholics for Gethsemane 3, the destructive effects of modern technology on the environment and society. Mind you, this is 2008, so we're 9 years into smartphones now, right? And now people are taking AI seriously, okay? Chevy has now offered up for inspection a fleet of electric cars, right? Google in its self-driving car is gonna happen. You all watch that YouTube video that says the future does not need us, that humanity may become the next horse, right? How long ago in Iowa did you need to know what your horse ate? And if it threw a shoe, how to get it repaired? Not that long ago, right? Horses were a big, big part of our world. Teams, what do they call them? Teamsters, right? The Teamsters Union, because you were, gee, ha, crack, with your whip, right? Where are the horses now? Anybody own a horse? Okay, well done. Yeah. 2 folks in the center, 3 folks in the center. The rest of us are like horses. Yeah, I repaired my 1962 Volkswagen 40 horsepower engine, No, horses. The one that eats hay and, Humanity, they say, is on the way to becoming the next horse. After the singularity, when we upload your brain to a database, repair it, fix it, and then download it brand new, full of algorithms that come out of consciousness only. Okay. So, what else? Buddhism and Christian understandings of the world and our place in it, interrelatedness, interdependence, dependent origination. The world is created, fallen, and redeemed. Sounds pretty Catholic. How monastic rules speak of the world and our life in it, bringing new awareness to ancient yet living documents. This was my presentation, which I shared with Sister Judith from Mount St. Scholastica in Atchison. Monasticism and the consumer society, simplicity of life, etc. Wholesome practices of monastic communities, bad practices, hidden or justified by ideology. Monasticism for the good of the earth, Buddhists and Catholics speaking with one voice. Preparation of a written statement of understanding and commitment. And then, if anybody is interested to pursue this, go to urbandharma.org. I think all those files are available. If you want to read the results, urbandharma.org. And you can hear the conference, which was lively and fun. Sadly, this is a video that didn't make it. Here is a publication from the proceedings, Green Monasticism, Buddhist Catholic Response to the Environmental Calamity. All right, so that's just a report to all of you, which some of you may be news to some of you, that the Buddhist Catholic monastic dialogue is this far along. This is a national movement. Regionally, in the Bay Area, there are two similar events taking place, not focused on the environment necessarily, but on Buddhist and Catholics in dialogue. How many Roman Catholics here tonight? Okay, a few, good. The regional one is called the Chan Zen Catholic Dialogue, Chan/Zen. Chan is the Chinese antecedent of what became Japanese Zen, right? So we have practitioners, monastics and priests, monks and priests from Chan and Zen traditions who have met every year. It's at the moment in abeyance. We had some folks pass away. But we met for 14 years every year, trading practice centers. 1 year in a Buddhist monastery, the next year in a Catholic center. Meeting and sharing dialogue and practice. So we ate together, meditated together, prayed together. I did my first Catholic Mass in a Buddhist Chan hall, right? And share a story. The current Archbishop of Santa Fe was at the time the auxiliary bishop of San Francisco, John Wester, born and raised in San Francisco, and a fine man. And he was a deep meditator, interestingly. And so that year we were meeting at the City of 10,000 Buddhas, our big monastery in Ukiah, California, Mendocino County, for a week. And there were 30 participants, half and half, 15 on both sides. And this was, I think, the 7th year of our encounter. And Bishop John at the time is famous for his statement at the end of the first year when he said, we were exchanging our snapshots of a moment that we were going to take with us out the gate and down the hill to share. He said, well, my snapshot is, he said, I want to express my gratitude to my Buddhist brothers and sisters for allowing us Catholics to remember our own native contemplative traditions. How about that? And people said to me, boy, you guys got a good bishop, he said, to be able to say that. So how did I discover Bishop John's samadhi, this Buddhist word about deep contemplation? It was my job to light the incense and get the hall ready in the morning for our early morning meditation. And so I came in and turned the lights on, and here was Auxiliary Bishop of San Francisco sitting with his legs crossed in full lotus, already meditating. He didn't wait for the official start. He was already sitting there. So I lit the incense, sat down beside him. Everybody came in, an hour, rang the bell. The sit is over. He's still sitting. So I sat with him, and then when he was done about a half hour later, I said, turn the lights off and lock the door and head off for the first conference. I said, Bishop John, that's pretty powerful. I said, what kind of Buddhist meditation are you doing? He said, Buddhist meditation? The Jesus prayer, he said. So, how about that? Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. You know that, the Philokalia? How many of you have read Franny and Zoe for 10 points? Salinger? Well done. All right. So a little green book that they carry around, Franny and Zoe. So yes, when you take the Jesus prayer and adapt it for meditation, what do? Lord Jesus, have mercy. Lord Jesus, have mercy. And it produced in Bishop John Wester this rock solid samadhi, this deep meditative state. How wonderful, you know. So look at the maturity of this comparison project, right? Where the Buddhists and the Catholics exchange their practices. Okay, so just to share a little bit about that. Apparently, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, has now made John Wester the Archbishop of Santa Fe. So he's on his way up. Now, let's go specifically to some of the notions about Buddhism and the environment. When we boil down what my teacher, Master Hsuan Hua, and his teacher, whose name was Empty Cloud, Elder Master Hsuan, who passed away, entered nirvana in 1959 at the age of 120, powered by vegetables. And if you look past him to what the two of them taught, you come to the 6 patriarchs, Dharma Jewel, Platform Sutra, Liu Zu Fabao Tanjing, it's called. It's one of the founding texts of the Chan school, which became the Zen school. 6 Patriarch Sutra, translated many times, available in your library here at Drake. What they taught, I say when you boil it down, was something that we're calling the心地法門, the Mind-ground Dharma-method. What is that? It's analogy. It's literary language, giving you a picture of the mind as a garden or a fertile cornfield. We're in Iowa, right? We get that. What is it? It grows whatever you plant. And the notion is the mind is a place where you plant seeds that are planted with body, things we do, mouth, words we say, and thoughts we think. Each one of them, you could say, starts a force vector out into the ozone, all right? Plants a seed for better or for worse. So thoughts of greed, thoughts of anger, thoughts of delusion, thoroughly, deeply planted down, will grow, right? Fruits of greed, anger, and delusion. Thoughts of virtue, thoughts of patience, thoughts of compassion, planted, will grow. So the value for this, in terms of environmental commitment, is become a skillful gardener of your own mind. That's the notion. So right away, what is it? There's an agrarian bent here. Buddhism grew up in 2,500 years ago in countries that were 85, 89% of the able-bodied humans were busily engaged in growing food, right? It was agrarian. The people who had time to learn language were probably the 1% of India and China. So the mind is a garden, able to grow impartially all manner of thoughts. Be a skillful gardener of that mind. Take responsibility, because why? You harvest the crops you grow yourself. There's nobody else to blame. All right? Now, interestingly enough, and if this was a semester class, I would go into notions of creation, because people say, people who are encountering Buddhism for the very first time, myself, for example, I was raised Methodist in Toledo, Ohio. Right? I was president of my Methodist Youth Fellowship. Right? And so people say, you guys believe in God? And a good, responsible answer is Buddhists are not atheistic, denying the existence of God. Buddhists are not polytheistic, affirming the presence of many creator deities. Buddhists are non-theistic, which is to say, if the notion of God has to be a powerful male creator, then that's not the story that we build around creation. What do Buddhists put in the place of a creator deity? It's the mind. Think of it as a garden. It's very earthy, right? Buddhism flourished in an agrarian world. There's dirt under the fingernails of meditators, right? And it's, you practice with the seasons. And it's down to earth. It is pragmatic. The Buddha was a prince who saw his future as a dead body and said, He was a champion. He had never been defeated by any athletic challenge, scholarly challenge, political challenge. He was being trained to take over from his father and become king. That all went out the window when he saw old age, sickness, and death and realized that was the promise of a life as king. He was going to be dead, right? And he wouldn't be able to take care of his wife or child. He said, I wonder, can anybody beat death? That was his project. That was the question he got, was, is mortality inevitable? So that was what he set about doing. And everything about the Buddha's teaching, capital D Dharma, right, as versus small d, which is kind of more like phenomena, everything about the Buddha's teaching has to do with addressing that project. Is mortality inevitable? Is there any way to escape dying? How about that? Right? So that was what he set himself to doing. So we find this connection with the natural world everywhere. The Mind-ground method is a valuable tool for illuminating one's intention, a direct way to tune in to your intentions. Okay, here's what came out of that conference that I wanted to share with you now. Many people, we have Jinfo, who is also in robes, originally from Taiwan, spent years and years and years in Minnesota, right? So he's local folks. And we, as I can tell, are the only two monastics in the room, unless somebody is, wearing their everyday clothes and actually left their collar back in their closet or something. We may be the only two monks that some of you have ever seen, perhaps. Maybe one of the only English-speaking monks, I don't know. Blue-eyed Buddhist monks, there aren't that many of us, right? So we hope more to come. Monastics are often seen as anachronistic, maybe irrelevant, right? Kind of curious. Sometimes people say, well, if you're not a pedophile, you're probably perverted in some other way, right? Serious. Well, maybe there's a reason for that assumption in some cases. So how would we know about a monastic connection to the environment? There's something in monastic communities, and I can speak for the Buddhist Sangha. People know the word S-A-N-G-H-A, meaning Buddhist community. I and Jinfo are members of the longest running fraternity on the planet. 2,500 years, straight back to the Buddha's own time, because of what's called the rule, the monastic rule. When you look at Catholics, Benedictines have the rule of St. Benedict. My goodness. 4th century Christian monastic who set about creating an order that is intact to this day. Still brings men and women into full-time commitment with the full-time engagement with the traditions, the practices, the values of their religious counterparts thousands of years ago. Right? In large part, I dress, eat, live, practice by the same standards that the Buddha's own disciples did. And it has to do with the rules. The rule, capital R, rule meaning the body of conventions that govern the monastics. Furthermore, wherever these monastics have been, Catholic and Buddhist alike, and if you look around the religious world, I'm speaking for two traditions, but if you look at the Ramakrishna order of Vedanta monks, Swami Vivekananda is a fine representative, very similar. At Gethsemane in 2008, we didn't have Hindus there, but there are no Jewish monastics. There are no Methodist monastics. Protestant monastics don't exist, as far as I know. There may be some new monasticism, but by and large, it's Catholics, the Buddhists, and the Hindus who have kept these traditions alive. So if people can, you know, America is great for pioneering new paradigms. Maybe we'll have some new monastic orders arising. Let's hope so. So anyway, it's that rule. And what are the primary values of that rule? And what is its value? The monastic rule for the Buddhists brings the monastics, it specifies an interface for skillfully living on the planet. It allows monks/nuns, and I might say women outnumber men at the city of 10,000 Buddhas 5-1. We have 120 bhikshunis, Buddhist nuns. We have about 30, roughly, bhikshus, monastics, men. So how about that? It allows monks and nuns to practice harmless, compassionate engagement using personal virtue, harmlessness, ahimsa, and wisdom's expedient means. The vehicle by which we do that are called the precepts. The precepts are the specific training rules. Give an example, 5 precepts: no killing, cherishing life instead; no stealing, cherishing property instead; no sexual misconduct, but responsible, committed behavior instead; no dishonesty, integrity instead with your words; and no intoxicants, right? The opposite of, I know some of the students are thinking, let's see, well, I've got something else to do tonight, right? So the idea is you cherish wisdom instead of mixing your bloodstream with substances. Okay. So killing, stealing, lust, lies, and intoxicants are training rules given by the Buddha, not because he likes you better if you do what he says. Instead, keep in mind that project, testing whether there's any way to end samsara, that continuity of birth and death. Instead, he said, if you're going to meditate successfully, I hope you do. Here are 5 things to avoid because they will trip you up. Pragmatic rules, grounded rules. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lust, don't lie, don't drug yourself because your meditation will be obstructed. They are for use. It's not any external value to these precepts. Although, interestingly enough, the comparison project, right? Where do you find thou shalt not kill, steal, covet, bear false witness? Familiar language, right? 4 out of 10, 10 Commandments. Yes, ma'am? Where does eating meat fall into that? That would be part of the first one, cherishing life. Well, are you a pre-law? Or are you, no. But I know, I'm kidding. Sure. It's a big question. And not, suppose, I mean, that could be our talk tonight, right? There are more carnivorous Buddhists than there are vegetarian Buddhists in the world. Complicated, huh? So how does that work? We'll talk afterwards, all right? So in the monastic community, the vegetarian, full-time vegetarian Buddhist monks and nuns are the Chinese, the Vietnamese, and sometimes the Koreans. The others take what is given. All right? So if somebody puts fish sauce in your bowl in Thailand as you go around for alms, you don't say, excuse me, I don't eat that. And how ironic, we have really, really good, close relationships with the monks of the Thai forest tradition, the disciples of Ajahn Chah, if anybody's following. And they're up in the northeast of Thailand, and they're respected all over Thailand. We get along with them so well. In the recent fires, Abhayagiri Forest Monastery in Redwood Valley did not burn. But 26, their entire community, came to the city of 10,000 Buddhas, and we hosted them for a week before the marshals and the sheriffs would let them back up Tom Kai Road to their monastery. They went back and discovered these rough, tough Apache firefighters from New Mexico. These guys are no nonsense, right? They came back, the monks came back and found that all the firefighters had used the parking lot of Abhayagiri as their staging for Redwood Valley, a community of 1,200 people who lost 800 buildings overnight. And the Apaches said, this is sacred ground. We saw the fire come up. Your space rejected the fire. Our hair stood on end. We love your place. Not a stick of Abhayagiri burned. And there's these aerial, now this is talking about miracles, right? All right, so there's these satellite heat maps. We were looking as they were, sheltering a city of 10,000 Buddhas. And here was this little circle of green surrounded by red on all sides. Abhayagiri, Fearless Mountain, didn't burn. Interesting. So we're best friends with the other team, the Theravada monastics, right? This is, historically, they don't talk to each other. They mutually diss each other. Not in America. Just put that baggage down. So Master Hua donated, my teacher gave 120 acres of Mendocino County mountainside to Ajahn Sumedho to build Abhayagiri back when. So we're good friends with them. They eat what is given. The one place where we disagree is diet. So your question is timely, young lady. So they say, if it's given to you, you can't select. And there are quite a few monastics who say, gee, it's funny, I was a vegetarian before I became a Thai forest monk. Now I'm a meat eater again. The Mahayana tradition says that lay people support monastics with food. The monastics support the lay people with wisdom, with dharma. Our job is to give dharma back. And so I say, I'm happy to eat low on the food chain. You don't have to give me food that you yourself don't eat. You think you have more merit by giving the monks the best, right? Well, the best for us is broccoli and tofu. Thank you very much. So, a lot to say about that topic. Okay, what are these precepts? Monastics have been living skillfully without honoring greed. Less material is more. More spiritual nourishment, more joy, more satisfaction, because monastics, East and West, celebrate service to the spirit, the invisible parts, but real parts of life, not to the self. The intention is to preserve this culture for humanity. Okay, so we're talking about how ancient perspectives, East and West, of monastics might serve as a useful perspective for a world with finite resources, where in the next 15 to 20 years, we're seriously going to have to look at where our protein comes from. For example, do the Chinese eat a lot of fish? The Chinese eat a lot of fish. Where is the Chinese fishing fleet tonight? Off the coast of Africa. Why are the Chinese negotiating all these treaties with African nations? It's because the East China Sea is out of seafood, fished out, right? So, finite resources, but a hugely, rapidly expanding population. What are we going to do? A monastic, i.e. Buddhist/Catholic perspective might be to decide for myself how much is need, what do I need to live comfortably, adequately, how much is greed, right? And if I can eat a little lower on the food chain and do fine, then there's more to share with others, all right? So, just a perspective. What do monastics, as defined by the Buddha, need to survive? 4 things, they say. We need clothes for the seasons, warm in the winter, cool in the summer. We need food and drink, right? We need shelter, mosquitoes, dew, rain, wind, and medicine when we're sick. With those 4 requisites, the spirit is liberated, right? So that's a useful perspective for us. You know, Americans tend to be just awash in stuff. You know, we've enjoyed our blessings so thoroughly, as if it's our share. You know, so once you leave the continental U.S. and travel in other countries, you realize, my goodness, folks don't have the blessings that we have. Maybe there will be a time when, in order to ensure the existence of other populations, we need to scale back. If so, here's a model. Time-tested, thousands of years, get by with less, right? 4 requisites. What, for me, is the question, is enough? The minimal material for survival so that my spirit can thrive. Not a tight, you know, pinched kind of, you know, deprivation. Not that. That's not the spirit. That's not how monastics thrive. But just enough for elegant simplicity. Good question. Clothes for 2 seasons, food and drink, bedding and shelter, and medicine. So, in terms of food and drink, contemplate this word, ahimsa, harmlessness. So the question I ask myself, I've stopped preaching vegetarianism to people. People don't want some guy without hair wearing a dress in their face telling them that what mom fed them was wrong, right? My mom loved me. She knew what I liked to eat, and she gave it to me. For me, I'm here, you know, you shouldn't eat that. You know, get out of my face. You can't tell me my mom didn't love me. You know. So what do you say? How do you define appropriate diet? And my answer would be, can I meet my nutritional needs without causing harm? I would prefer to do that. I'd like to eat harmlessly. So this word ahimsa, right, no harm, is a really good guideline. In America, we can. My goodness, Iowa creates food for the rest of the world. Right? So instead of a zero-sum kind of competition, that I've got to get mine, and if I do, I'm taking it away from you, is there a way to meet my needs and feel gratitude for the shared blessings? If so, that's the way I would like to do it. We talked about the 5 precepts, 10 commandments. The Quran has all 5. The Quran, Muslims don't use intoxicants. Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms has those 5. And here's some of the ideas that I wanted to give everybody tonight. I know, let's see here. We started at 7, it's already 8:15. How late are we going tonight, Professor? 8:30. Ooh, good grief. Wowee. Okay, here are some primary notions that came out of the conference from the Buddhists and the Catholics that I think are useful and helpful for our American family, our North American family. When you give yourself a challenge to say, what can I learn from a monastic community? Those 5 precepts, we zoomed right past them. Did everybody see those? So here we have Judaism, Catholicism, Protestant Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and Buddhism all agreeing that killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and false speech out of 5 are things that wholesome human beings don't, that they restrain. We watch those potential, in my mind, watch it rise, and can I instead cherish life, cherish material well-being, cherish relationships, and cherish integrity? Most of the world's major religious founders would say, let's do that. Okay, if that is my benchmark, if those are the marching orders that I give myself, according to Judaism, Christianity, et cetera, what arises is the potential for me as a human being to live in the world community, in the human community, simply, without greed, which is an important word for us now. Living harmlessly in a way that bestows life and live simply so all of them might simply live, which lets us experience this sense of interdependence. Just a slice of bread involves so many different hands, so much energy transforms to give me a slice of raisin bread, right? And it says material well-being is good, but spiritual well-being is also a priority. That's what the monastic communities have always cherished, that we pray over our food. We say, I'm grateful for what I've been given. And key, that long word in the bottom, this view says humans are not alone in the center. All right, non-anthropocentrism. Now, for this to be possible, we have to step aside from the story that humanity was created in God's image, which is the defining ethos, and that works. That's the story that most of the Christian, the Abrahamic world would agree. Right? The Buddhist view says the mind is in the center. Humanity is part of the whole, not apart from the whole. And our current lack of balance, where humanity has become the dominant species and is responsible for the vanishing of how many? 40 species per minute on the planet, something like that. Check my figures. Humanity would do well to find harmony with other species, stepping back into this web of life, non-anthropocentricity. And if we can do that so that other species might live, we might find we sleep better. We might find that our soul is lighter. I live for 4 months out of every year in the Australian bush, a place called Benogan in Queensland. I'll be there in 2 weeks. Hallelujah, as they say. And it's Australia has the largest population, the smallest population density ratio of all major, I guess, first world countries. That is to say, more space around every person. And where I live in the forest, they call it the bush, and I'm on a hillside, and my deck is about 20 feet in the air and built into the hillside. So I get to see all the feathered communities. Is that the appropriate politically correct word? All the birds, by golly, fly by. And I've been a friend with Kookaburra family now for 4 or 5 years. His name, the male Kookaburra who finds my offerings of veggie ham valuable. He's the only one who comes down. His wife won't have anything to do with me. They mate for life. Ali has come down. We wash the salt out of the veggie ham. It's a protein, isolate. and they salt it. So you wash the salt out, because kookaburras don't have kidneys. They can't handle salt, right? You wash the salt out. And they're carnivores, and this is enough of a meat substitute that he'll take it. So I feed Ali, and he comes down, lands on my knee, and I'll feed him. I can't touch him. He doesn't want me to touch him. But Ali has raised 2 generations of kids, of young kookaburras in my presence, and he put me into the food line, put me into the food chain. When he brought down proudly his son and daughter into the tea tree next to on the deck, and here were these kids, kids just incessant hunger. And Ali, who before this would take the veggie ham, gulp it down, he takes it in his beak and goes off and beak feeds it to the kid and flies back for another piece, right? And this goes on and on. If my computer worked, you could see it, you know. So anyway, what I learned, these tremendous lessons, watching these birds that have been there in this environment, the gum forest habitat, the eucalyptus habitat there is perfect for kookaburras and pythons and brush turkeys and bushy-tailed possums and currawongs and wallabies and these huge huntsman spiders. Anybody what is it? What's fear of spiders? Arachnophobic. Be cautious when you go to the Australian bush. These critters have been there untouched, uninterrupted for millions of years because there aren't that many people there. So I get to sit in and watch another kind of harmony. And of course, it's the food. The only thing they want to do with me is food, but I get to watch, right? I mean, to be honest, and I feed them cautiously without getting any kind of dependence on them. I don't want to interfere. But to see the emotional reality, the relationships of each species, and then the relationships in between, right, the species. For example, I'm going to tell you one, I'm going to sing a song, I think we're done. We'll get some questions. What I understand, there's this wonderful anthropological book that says all bird songs came from Australia. I don't have it, I have it on my Kindle, I don't have the author's name here. It's a theory that the Australian birds that are the original propagators of all the bird songs. Check it out, there's an interesting thesis. What I understand is that all the different species occupy a different range of the, cycles per second? The audible range, okay? So currawongs make all their conversation at 80 hertz or something like that, and the kookaburras, with their crazy laughter, anybody know the song? Kookaburra up in, you all know it? Old gum tree, Mary, Mary King. It's true, they laugh. Okay. I sing that for my Aussie friends, and they go, "Oh, this Yank's crazy, I think." So apparently that's our song. I don't know, they thought it was their song. Anyway, so each species of bird occupies a different pitch. They don't interfere with each other. How did I learn that? I play Irish penny whistle, and I couldn't wait to play for the birds and see how they would all come down like St. Francis and land on my penny whistle. I'm playing along, and the birds are going, phony. They have no attention to me whatsoever. Apparently, I was not in any of the, I wasn't speaking Currawong or Kookaburra or Lorikeet. All right, so they all occupy a different pitch. However, there are in the neighborhood these wedge-tailed eagles, the largest bird in Australia, that are major raptors, right? They eat every other bird, and when a wedge-tailed eagle flies by, any of the other species can sound an alarm that they all hear. Isn't that interesting? They share a common alert language. Watch out. It cuts through all the different frequencies. And they all go like that. And then he's gone, and there's an all clear, and they're back. And they don't interfere with each other's song. How interesting, right? So, what have we got? I have a story. There we go. All right. I did a pilgrimage at one point in my formation as a monastic. And during the pilgrimage, I did a full prostration to the ground every third step. It's a traditional Buddhist practice of connecting with the environment in a real way. And I traveled with a companion up the Pacific Coast Highway from South Pasadena, spent the first month in LA, Wilshire Boulevard, all the way to Santa Monica, and then turned north on Highway 1, heading to Ukiah, 800 miles away. And we passed through a place called Gaviota Pass, which is just at the end of Santa Barbara before it becomes Big Sur, if people know the California coast. And at the time, it was the 6th year of a drought that California had been going through. And the sun was baking down, and everything with a lick of sense stayed out of the sun. Well, except the mad dogs and the monks are out there bowing, right? So there was one very large tree at the Gaviota Pass. It was kind of a banyan kind of thing. It spread and spread and spread, and the shade of this tree was wide and broad. And as we were bowing by, we went about a mile a day, so we were able to see precisely what was around us. And under the shade of the tree, all the natural enemies were making peace during the sunlight hours. Here were the deer with their tongues hanging out. You ever see a deer pant? Hot in California, right? And next to the deer, at a respectful distance, were the coyotes. And the coyotes are like that, right? And over here are the rabbits. Around the corner from the rabbits were the feral dogs, of which there are many in Southern California, right? People move away and leave Lassie to take care of himself. Harmonizing in peace to get out of the hot sun. There were snakes over here and frogs over there. Natural enemies who had made peace during the sun, during the hot times. When the sun went down, they all backed into their respective corners and vanished, right? So we thought, my goodness, how wise are the animals to find harmony in a crisis, which was the hot sun. How come the humans haven't figured out how to do that, right? We're still arguing about tax cuts while our children, you realize there are classroom teachers in public schools around the country who have to buy the textbooks out of their own salaries because boards of educations are broke, and yet the Pentagon gets every penny it asks for. We will destroy bodies, but we won't teach them. How interesting. We haven't figured it out yet, right? What does that say about our future? Well, we'll have lots of uneducated warmongers, maybe. So anyway, so here's a song, and your part comes right along here, and it's this. We're all sitting in the shade of the family tree. Sitting in the shade of the family tree. The cameras are running. If you don't sing, we'll know. All right? So just to let you know, let's try it. See that last line of every verse? We're all sitting in the shade of the family tree. We do it twice. Sitting in the shade of the family tree. By the way, there's some stealth vegetarian propaganda in the song. Just to let you know. No. water and earth, wind and fire, roots digging deeper, branches reaching higher, north and south and east and west, all beings are kin to me. Here we go, your part. We're all sitting in the shade of the family tree. Once again, sitting in the shade of the family tree. I got earth in my feet, I've got oceans in my knees. 7 generations live on inside of me. My roots connect the universe, all beings are family. Here we go. We're all sitting in the shade of the family tree. Sounds good. Sitting in the shade of the family tree. We're going to take a computer break. Here we go. What we do to our planet, we do to our home. Planet Earth is our address. Nobody lives alone. Everyone's a neighbor in our Earth community. Join me, we're all sitting in the shade of the family tree. Sitting in the shade of the family tree. Earth is home to all of us. Share the crops, don't make a fuss. Share the food grown in the ground. There's enough to go around. You eat the burger, feed the cat. One you savor, one you pet. Pet the burger, eat the cat. I don't think I got that straight. I got brothers wearing fur, I've got sisters wearing fins. Some with wings and some with tails and some with rainbow skin. I don't eat my family, come sit here right by me. One more. We're all sitting in the shade of the family tree. Sitting in the shade of the family tree. Now, the cook, she calls it omelet, but the chicken called it egg. You may call it drumstick, but the turkey called it leg. Every mother loves her children, live and let life be. Here we go. So we can sit beneath the shade of the family tree. Sit beneath the shade of the family tree. Come on, sit beneath the shade of the family tree. All right. Yay! Thank you for that. Let me give you one more pointer here. Please, when you get a chance, check out drbu.org, Dharma Realm Buddhist University. And let's see here, how big can we make that? drbu.org, which, crossing your fingers, crossing your knees, crossing everything you got, in February becomes drbu.edu. We're being reviewed for accreditation, and all is, shh, don't want to jinx it. Dharma Realm Buddhist University, which is a place where this sort of inquiry can continue. We have BA programs, MA programs, and I think our comparison project would flourish in the environment of Dharma Realm Buddhist University. I hope so. So please do check that out. If people want to hear more of that Buddhist music, check out Dharma Radio. mind-ground-dharma-method.org. Also, I have a YouTube channel where we do Buddhist exegesis, Buddhist lectures, which is Dharma Realm Live. So if anybody's curious to find out more. Okay, we are out of time. Time to stop, or do we have time for questions?
We have time for 2, 3 questions, maybe.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Hi.
Thank you so much for this talk. I've had this question on my mind, I think, because I know the host that partly made this possible is Pure Land of Iowa. And there are a few environmental movements that I've kind of been following that I'm interested in that are associated with Pure Land Buddhist traditions. And kind of seem to get a lot of traction out of this idea of creating a Pure Land on Earth and creating the Pure Land in the here and now. And I like this kind of, the sense is not that it's just this passive awareness of the present, but it's kind of like there's work to do. And so they're very sort of active and effective environmental movements. So I guess I just wanted to hear you talk a little bit more in addition to kind of these shared monastic values, maybe about what the kind of Pure Land teachings have specifically to offer.
Okay, right on. Do you want to mention some of those organizations that you can?
There's one in Taiwan and the name is escaping.
Tzu-chi, T-Z-U-C-H-I, Compassionate Rescue, Tzu-chi. They're located in Hualien, Taiwan, and every American city by now.
And there's a few movements also in Japan that I don't think have any kind of like, if they're necessarily unified or if it's just sort of individual Pure Land temples that
Great.
the communities are involved in.
Super. Okay. Yeah, I would give you a quick one, which is my tradition is Chan, Zen, but doesn't exclude Pure Land. And the Chan school would say you make a Pure Land in your own mind with your next thought. And as I pointed to but didn't go into, the Buddhist creation story is not the Big Bang, and it's not 7 days on the seventh you rested. It's what are you doing with your mind right this minute? So as your thoughts go, so goes the purity of your Pure Land. That's a Chan perspective. It's the mind-ground Dharma door that we mentioned. Take responsibility for the weeds that you're ignoring right now or the weeds you're composting. So that's it. I'm in charge. So powerful, empowering, but way too real for a lot of folks who want that. They want that powerful other determiner who tells you how it is. So, yes. Anybody? Going once. Go long. Okay, we're good. Thank you so much. This was lovely.